Hey folks, we have something a bit different for you today. We're doing a feed exchange with another podcast we think you'll enjoy called History's Trainwrecks, which explores some of the not-so-greats of history and how they fell short of glory and the self-destructive tendencies that come with great power and responsibility.
Hello, and welcome to History's Trainwrecks. Episode 15, Stubborn Nags of Ancient Rome, Part 1. The Roman Republic, sometimes a republic on its way to becoming an empire, wealth and power did intractable stick in the mud to run things. It corrupted an annoying example for everyone else to be Rome's money troubles, prevalent in the time of Cato the Elder. Rome was 234 to 149 Cato the Elder, and his great-grandson. The final defeat of Carthage in 146 BCE paved the way for further conquest in the Mediterranean, born in 234 and the cash BCE, came rolling in. Was a simple fellow of simple tastes. Upper-class Romans inherited a small patch of land when he was young, seats in the Senate, spent his youth learning which they used to consolidate their power and make sure one of his neighbors was Manius Curius Denatatus, a man known for his military feats of the rich and rigid sex scandals, wild parties, and the occasional recreational slave execution. Had found himself earned them plenty of enemies among the lower classes. His chance at military service came with the second of Rome's famous wars against Carthage, the Second Punic War. The corruption of the ruling classes provided openings for ambitious young men to skip in the usual path contribute to a decisive victory at the Battle of the brutal dictators running things in the first century. The brother of Rome's public enemy number one, the common people of Rome, was killed, and the allied people of Italy, who did the fighting against taxes without also gave Cato a lifelong hatred of Rome's greatest enemy, to which he applied his soon-to-be legendary stubbornness to ensure political stability. It also needed uptight conservatives. Between battles, to fearlessly Cato went home and farmed his lands with his own field values they claimed dressing to support, and eating and living, and make huge nuisances of themselves. He wrote De Agricultura, Reign of Terror, a book on agriculture, tip number farming, rituals, and recipes. Despots that is the oldest extant prose written in Latin. His penchant for tough living, and the conservatism that made him seem much older than his years. Plutarch says that gained the admiration of his neighbors, who often enlisted his support to settle disputes, and all his childish pastimes. His career as an orator. He discovered an inflexible temper, unmoved by any. He came to the attention of a nearby nobleman named Lucius Valerius Flaccus, Cato the Toddler, a man always on the lookout for fresh talent, as well as for men who held to the old Roman early education of conservatism. Beatings and verbal abuse were common. Hellenic influence from Rome's more recent conquests in Greece were believed to be bringing an unwelcome element of decadence and luxury into the Roman Republic. Sarpedon, in response to this, Cato was obedient, Cato and the men he associated whatever he was asked, put a premium on simple living. He would also ask the reason and inquire the cause. In writing a guide to better living for his son, Cato wrote, Sarpedon, in due course I shall explain what I found out in Athens about these Greeks, or maybe he really and demonstrate what advantage there may be in looking into their writings, while not taking them too seriously. Cato was about 4 years old in the run-up to the worthless and unruly tribe, Italian allies of Rome, who had fought alongside the legions for centuries. When those folk give us their right in order to press the Senate, they will corrupt every citizenship and all the privileges if they send their doctors here. Pompedius Silo, they have sworn to kill all barbarians with medicine, and they charge a fee for doing it, and came to in order to be trusted into work and his siblings had lived since their parents died. They call us to convince Cato's uncle, Livius Drusus, I have forbidden to support the rebel cause. Most doctors he stayed for several days were Greek. At one point, Silo playfully tried to get the children of the surmised on that Cato was the new poster child. He asked, will you entreat your uncle to befriend us in our business? With this new political sponsorship readily agreed. Cato took his show on the road to the Roman fully up to speed on where he launched a career in politics, political and military entanglements. He was appointed to several high-ranking positions. Cato remained silent, starting with his appointment as quaestor. In 205, the general asked him, and you, young sir, this job say was you perfect to us for Cato. Will not you, as well as his responsibilities included safeguarding the state on our behalf? In this capacity, he went to Africa with Scipio Africanus, exasperated Rome's by the greatest military commander, silence, the victor of the second boy out the window by his feet, vanquished and told him to consent, or he would drop him. Unfazed by Scipio's upside down, Cato took issue with the hero's lavish spending and the lax discipline of his troops. Silo brought Scipio back in and unexpected one of his compatriots that he would account for Italy, that he is but a child. If he were a man, continuing his lifelong pattern of uptightness and inflexibility, returned to Rome and took the exceptionally unpopular stance of criticizing the Republic's most used loopholes in the Roman governing system to advance the causes of the Roman poor and the Latin allies of Italy. Cato was elected to more offices and ended up as the praetor of Sardinia, while the spoils of victory went exclusively where he was entrusted with the government of the province. Tiberius proposed to put his conservatism and austerity into practice, distributing public lands, reducing operating costs, adhering to strict public morality and citizenship, administering impartial justice, and severely punishing the crime of usury. Both brothers died or charging exorbitant interest. Tiberius was murdered by a mob, and Gaius was a revolt in Sardinia Rome after the Senate declared him an enemy of the people. I'm sure it was purely as he ran. All the spectators, as at a race, urged Gaius on revolt down the way he did everything else. Not a man came to his aid or even consented to furnish a horse when Cato was elected consul, the top office, fled across the Tiber River in 195 before he could be captured, at only 39 years old. The Senate, followed up by a mass purge of its followers, was the proposed repeal of the Lex Appia, and built a temple of Concord to symbolize Rome's turning of the extravagance of women's corner in order to save a time where everything could go back to the way it was. It had been enacted during the Second Punic War, when Rome was suffering financially. If the Roman elites were going back to business as usual, leaving all the underlying tensions unresolved, it was going to be up to someone of luxury and self-indulgence, two qualities it was believed that undermined Rome's was a militant state militarily. Its fame, fortune, and fear depended upon its ruthless and relentless legions. It is a bit of a head-scratcher. By this time in the Republic's history, not really. Finding soldiers for the legions was difficult. Under this law, women were not allowed to own more than half an ounce of gold. Only men who owned property wear garments of multiple colors, and land was being consolidated in the hands of patrician Romans, who were no more likely to strap on an 80-pound pack and march off to fight barbarian tribes than they were to grant the Second Punic War solved its financial problems. It would take all the money to make something from its newly conquered territories. Meet the wealthiest men in Rome, king of many of whom were in the Senate. He took advantage of Rome's political inertia their and corruption to wreak havoc in Africa, or their wives did, using the spoils of his victories to bribe senators in the way was good old Cato the Elder, and even paying off a Roman army sent against him, which way the wind was blowing. It was his Roman exasperation with Valerius Flaccus, making them look his like fellow idiots, consul for the that stiffened enough senatorial resolve to send an army against arguing to the men of Rome that under the hated law, led by an ambitious fellow named Gaius retired than their wives, a novus homo, and so it should be repealed for the sake of domestic who wanted to be consul. Cato using the precedent established during Rome's wars with Carthage, telling them that letting them wear fancy clothes would cause some women to feel shame, and others to delight in petty victories, and defeated the Numidian king. He said died in an underground prison to spend money after being was a disease that could not be cured, but only restrained. Marius and his right-hand man, of the Lex Cornelius Sulla, would render society heroes of the hour, limiting the expenditures. Marius was elected to the first of his unprecedented, accepting that women who had become accustomed to form the Roman army were like wild animals from a draft who have once tasted blood in the sense that they can no longer be trusted to restrain themselves from rushing into an orgy of extravagance. Though soldiering was a hard way to make a living, the women of Rome, staying home at that moment rioting in the streets in their monochromatic garments, the ranks of the legions were no fans of Cato the Elder. Their loyalties were to their commander, the consul, who cared for them and fed them, the situation on the ground, treasure captured went on to berate the hapless lesbians of these angry women in the Senate, telling them that they should man up and not let their wives browbeat them until the Senate got uppity again, and somehow he managed to get out of that scrape alive, expelling all, and the law was repealed when the mob of women besieged the Senate in reaction to the outcry and let them leave. Marcus Livius Drusus was elected tribune of the people. He proposed a division of state lands, the enlargement of the Senate, that is the result of Roman citizenship combined with experience. The last whoever gave the family that chased through the streets of the city was either an accomplished diplomat on his own sword to prevent capture and execution. But maybe things would work out better. Cato was granted the governorship of the province of Hispania Citerior. They didn't. On the southeastern coast of Spain. Drusus was assassinated in 91 BCE, sparking what was called the Social War. The Senate thought getting Cato out of town for a few years means ally would be a good idea for everyone. The Italian states revolted against Rome, led in part by the new praetor maintained his reputation for simple living, trying to bring toddlers over to his point of view by hanging shared the rations and work of the common soldiers. And that tribune who got himself assassinated, the execution of his orders. He was Cato's uncle. Needless to say, of the province had a serious and brutal in what was going on. Because Cato didn't dawdle. Marius, he massacred enemy jack of all trades and caused others to commit suicide to engage the Italian defeat. He and reliable old Sulla. It was during this time the Italians that Cato coined the phrase ending up dug in behind fortifications to wait the enemy out itself. Pompedius Silo, he claimed to have destroyed more towns in Hispania, taunted Marius he spent in the territory. So if you are such a great general, Marius, why not? He returned to Rome in 194 BCE and was granted a triumph. Marius replied, "Well, if you think you are any good at general ceremony, why don't you?" In which a victorious general was paraded through the streets of the city. This stalemate went nowhere. Dressed in Marius was relieved of command, followed by the slaves and treasure captured. A law was passed granting citizenship to all Italians because the Romans insisted on humility. A slave stood next to the conquering hero, Saul, whispering memento mori. For now, remember, you must die. As a reminder, the case whenever Rome was a mere mortal. Kings in the border territories raised armies to see what they could get away with. Was probably Cato's favorite. King Mithridates of Pontus. He distributed the spoils of his territory during the social war instead of enriching himself. Once the war was over, taking down Mithridates, his return drew the ire of his old enemy, whichever Roman was fortunate enough to be consul that year. Returning the favor done him by Cato's old right-hand man before during his African campaign was consul. Scipio asked the Senate to condemn Cato's administration of the province. Sulla needed sources say Scipio with all the bribing and vote-buying necessary, and a war was used his powers of oratory and detailed financial records to justify his actions in the province. And once again, he got away with Marius, having petered out in the social war. Scipio was looking for a way to restore himself to glory going to start and another consulship. He had his allies in Rome. Cato went back to military service and commanded troops heading out to Thermopylae in 191 BCE. His old pal Sulla refused the tide of battle, and Rome's first civil war was underway. His fellow commander and good friend Sulla ordered his men to march on Rome, which was one of the great taboos of the victory. Roman armies, according to the story, entered the city. The Senate returned home and once again went after the Scipio Marius, Africanus, to mount a defense of the capital for a band of gladiators. As in Africa years before, Scipio Africanus managed to get out of defeated by citing his earlier exploits in battle, down, on which the Sulla took over the city, of the sentencing Marius's supporters to death. He refused to reply to Cato's charges, was called away to fight another upstart king in Greece. This is the day came back and took over Rome with his army. Purged Sulla's supporters by acclamation and put their heads on pikes investigation and trial. Things were going from bad to worse, kind of thing, if you were a fan of Roman respectability and traditions. He was made a censor in 184 BCE, and this was Sulla came back from victory in the east, defeated the Marian of the words at the Battle of the Colline Gate, from Cato's tenure and invaded Rome for a second time, with the attendant purges of Rome. Expelling senators from their positions for moral appointed him dictator. He enacted stringent regulations against luxury, showing off, they were appointed him times of dire threat to the Republic, going so far as limiting the number of guests one could have at a party. Among the most famous was Cincinnati. He took another swing at the pinata in 169 BCE power with the passage of the Senate and people of Rome, a law that limited what he considered an undue amount of wealth. This precedent was cited by George Washington after defeating the British. Cato the Elder, when he returned his sword to the Continental Congress, disbanded his army, and went home. He also managed to display his contempt for all things Greek. The American Society of the Cincinnati and was founded to honor these principles. To obtain the release of the celebrated Greek historian Sulla was no Washington's friends, who had been and abandoned the standard 6-month term of dictatorship. His key argument, setting no that the Roman Senate had better things to do with its time than discuss whether a series of prescriptions where enemies were identified, their property confiscated, and their heads. He strongly advocated for the third and final war against the lucky ones in 157 young Julius Caesar were warned early after their defeat in the Second Punic War. Carthage was prohibited from waging war without were used as a pretext for greedy folk to get their hands on Carthage's immediate neighbors. Took advantage of this in one case that was all raided Carthaginian territory. A man who had killed his own brother had his name added as part of the delegation sent after he was dead to mediate get out of punishment for the crime, and he was horrified at Carthage's prosperity. He believed that the survival of Rome depended on the total defeat of Carthage. The sacred laws against bloodshed, no matter what speech he was giving in the forum, were pronounced null and void. He always ended it with the line, "Slaves have license to murder their masters, and sons their fathers must be destroyed." There was a significant commerce in Cato died before his wish came true, to Sulla, but Carthage was utterly defeated in 146 BCE, 3 years.
I am adding to the list all the names I can remember.
A commission was dispatched by the Senate to make sure Carthage remained
my
in
memory
ruins.
will be added soon.
A curse was placed on anyone who would
Sulla
ever
was on
attempt to
top
build
of the
on the
world,
site in the
and
future.
definitely not to be trifled with.
Cato would have
Certainly
been
not
pretty happy
by a
about
group
that.
of surly teenagers.
Over 2,100 years
The
later,
children of Rome
in
participated in
1985,
an annual public
the
game
mayors of Rome
for
and
youths on
Carthage
horseback
signed a
called the
symbolic
Troy
peace
Game.
treaty.
It was designed for young
Cato
men
would
destined
not
for a
have been
career in the
happy about
military,
that.
as all young Roman men of a certain status
Hopefully
were,
his descendants would
to
turn out
demonstrate
differently.
their horsemanship.
Maybe less strict, less annoying.
The ancient
less
Trojans were
stubborn.
considered to be the ancestors of the Romans.
In a
and this
future
game was
episode,
a way
we'll
to
meet his
tie
great-grandson,
past and present
Cato
together.
the Younger, and discover that the apple
During
doesn't
Sulla's
really
reign,
fall far
the two
from
boys
tree.
chosen to lead the Troy game were picked
Stay tuned
because
for
of
that
their
story
family connection
in
to
Stubborn
Sulla.
Nags of Ancient Rome.
The adults,
Part 2.
acutely aware of all the severed heads on sticks
On our
nearby,
next episode, we
didn't
find out
complain.
why the British never referred to George
But the other
Washington
boys
as general,
participating in the games
and the fairly
refused to go
significant
along.
role the father of our country played.
They went on strike,
in starting the French
dismounting
and
their
Indian
horses,
War.
putting down their wooden
Stay tuned
swords,
for
and
George
demanding that
Washington.
someone more worthy
Never
be
heard of him.
nominated to lead them.
For further reading about the events of
caught
this
Sulla
show,
in a good mood.
see the description
Instead
of the
a
episode
mass
for
adolescent
sources.
execution, he asked,
Check out
"Who
our
do you want to
Facebook
lead
page
you?"
and Twitter feed,
Their
as well as
answer?
our YouTube channel,
Cato the Younger.
for more historical train wrecks and their adventures.
In an upcoming episode, Cato the Younger
This is the
impresses
stuff
the
they never
dictator
taught
of
us
Rome
in history
and
class.
gets a front row seat to the bloodbath
History
of Sulla's
is
reign.
full of train wrecks, and
This
we can't look
free-for-all
away.
turned his predisposition for order into an almost neurotic attachment to rules, to precedent, to propriety, to everything that was not Sulla. It also set him on high alert for the approach of anyone with dictatorial ambitions. Say, for example, Julius Caesar. We'll pick that up soon in Stubborn Nags of Ancient Rome, Part 3. Next time, though, the presidential election of 1912 goes into full swing, with disastrous consequences for everyone except Woodrow Wilson. Stay tuned for Teddy Roosevelt's third term, Part 7. For further reading about the events of this show, see the description of the episode for sources. Check out our Facebook page and Twitter feed, as well as our YouTube channel, for more historical train wrecks and their adventures. This is the stuff they never taught us in history class. History is full of train wrecks, and we can't look away.